morgon och varmt välkomna hit till Lunds domkyrkoforum. Idag så kommer jag att leda det här samtalet och jag heter Ulrika Emanuelsson och jag är också tonsättare och kördirigent härifrån Lund. Eftersom vi i vår panel har en helt engelsktalande person så kommer vi faktiskt att hålla oss till engelska. Så jag hoppas att ni är införstådda med detta, och i våran frågestund efter samtalet så går det bra för er att ställa frågor. Och är det någon som känner sig obekväm med att prata engelska då, så kan vi hjälpas åt och översätta. Har ni inte stängt av telefonerna så gör vänligen det nu, och då vandrar vi in i engelskan. Good morning and very welcome to all of you, both the audience and the panel. I will just say a few words about the conversation, which is under the umbrella of the annual Lund Choral Festival, as well as the Future Week here in Lund, a week that this year carries the title Forces in Motion. So there were 3 compositions commissioned by the Southern Choral Center, Körcentrum Syd, and 3 composers were chosen, all being put to the challenge of composing a piece under the title Forces in Motion. And this has resulted in 3 very different compositions. But before we unleash the conversation, I would like to shortly just introduce our panel today, starting with Martina Tomner, who is from Malmö, a composer with a diploma degree from Malmö Academy of Music, who is a freelance composer, a music teacher in music theory, and as you will see later today, also the conductor of her ensemble. And Martina composes chamber and electronic, acoustic, as well as orchestral music. And next, I'd like to welcome Michael Edgerton, a world citizen, now living here in Malmö, but originally from Wisconsin, if I'm correct. Yeah. Now professor in artistic research at Malmö Academy of Music since last year, I think. Oh. Yeah. And Michael has a long list of works and is performed worldwide, and is known to be a specialist of the extra-normal voice as a composer and a pedagogue, a researcher, and also performer. There are some very nice clips on the YouTube if you want to look on them and hear them later. He's also author of The 21st Century Voice, a substantial book on contemporary vocal techniques. Very interesting. And next, I'd like to welcome Cecilia. No, I will wait with you. I will take you at the end. Sorry. Next, I would like to welcome Kjell Perder from Stockholm, who is also a freelance composer, teacher, conductor, singer, and also author. Kjell's list of work consists of pieces for solo instruments, orchestral music, a great many choral works, oratories, a concert mass, and several operas, among which is one called Earth and Wind, with a theme of a climate opera, I think, a choir opera, if I'm correct. And that is a little about you composers. And now I'd like to also introduce the conductors, Mrs. Cecilia Martinlöf, a conductor with broad experience of both choir and orchestral conducting, who is also Director Cantorum here at Lund University since 2007, if I'm correct.
Yes.
Excellent. And also Lena Ekman-Frisk, who is teaching choral singing methods, conducting and repertoire at the Malmö Academy of Music. Lena serves also as the director within Körcentrum Syd, the Southern Choral Centrum. Excellent. So I'd like to actually start with you, Cecilia.
Oh,
if you could just, with a few words, tell us a little about your choir who you are working with today.
Okay, the choir that performed this piece is, more or less the big student choir of the university. We are about 45 to 50 members each year, with a lot of newcomers every year, of course, since they are mostly coming in and studying and then leaving again. So this has been interesting and of course also a challenge, because you never know what choir you have the next year, and some are staying for a long time. This year I had one bass, and then suddenly I had 13. But you know, you don't really know, and you have to wait a little bit when you start working. But it's a wonderful group of mostly students, of course.
Yes.
Rehearsing once a week, and now, of course, a bit complicated, divided in groups due to
the situation.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
That's about it.
Yes,
I would say.
And
studying all subjects. Studying all subjects from the university.
From the university. Thank you. And I think also Lena, if you could say a few words about your ensemble, who we will see later on the concert.
Yes, and my ensemble is the Malmö Academy of Music Women's Choir, and it's an academic choir, but it's not only young students in the choir, because it is run as free academic courses, so anyone can apply for a position in this choir. So we have singers aged from 20 to 65, and I started this ensemble 10 years ago. And felt the urge to conduct a women's choir. There is so much wonderful music to be sung for women's voices, and we practice at the academy. And we also have been struggling with pandemic restrictions. So I'm so happy we are here today, and I'm so gracious and grateful that we have been able to film these performances in advance. So we can. The alternative would be to cancel it all. So I'm so happy that we can be here today.
Excellent. So, and also there's a third ensemble, and that will lead us on to the composers. Martina, could you tell us a little bit about your ensemble?
Yes, Mixes Campus is a community choir. So it consists of about 30 singers, very diverse backgrounds, different ages. The choir itself has been around for more than 50 years. And some of the singers have been around, well, maybe not for 50 years, but for several decades. And others came recently. So it's singers from different backgrounds. They all have different jobs, and they come Monday evening to sing. We also have been struggling with how to maintain our rehearsals during this time. And we've actually done a lot of digital rehearsals. And I think I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that later.
Yes.
It's a Malmö-based choir. No, it's not connected to any church or organization.
Free.
Yeah.
So, if we start with you, Martina, and let's talk a little bit about your new piece called, maybe you will like to introduce it
yourself.
Yes,
it's a piece called Stillheten, which translates to the quiet. And it's a piece based on texts by a local poet named Michael Edgerton. This piece explores different experimental techniques in a playful way, combined with music that is supposed to be quite accessible, even for a community choir. It doesn't have to be advanced. It's supposed to be diatonic and in combination with a bit of extended techniques, experimental techniques. And I also use a percussionist to interact with the choir, interact with these techniques. So the idea was to play with the sound effects that the choir could make in collaboration with the percussionist. The text, the lyrics, the connection to this forces in motion is the inner forces, the forces within, and the forces of nature. So the text is about how we can recharge in nature by going out into nature and listening to the sounds of nature, and how that gives us strength. So it was a collaboration with this poet who had written a book called Guldkorn från universum, little pieces of gold from the universe. And I chose a short poem as the basis of the composition, and then I added a few lines from different poems from that collection as spoken solos within the choir.
And actually, a thing that was connecting all the three pieces is that you also use a bit of extended vocal techniques in all three of the pieces, actually. And I think maybe we could have a little look on your score.
Absolutely.
And also, we will enjoy hearing Martina singing all four parts. She has found. Tell us about your.
Well, as I said, we had. It was a challenge to maintain regular rehearsals during this time, especially since, as I said, we have singers from different ages and quite a lot of singers who belong to risk groups. So we weren't able to have ordinary rehearsals every week. We started out with a couple of outdoor rehearsals when we started in August and the weather was warm. But then we switched to digital rehearsals via Zoom. And I wanted to see if I could create the illusion for the singers that they were still rehearsing together. So I made a sound file, or several sound files, where I was the choir. So I recorded myself 12 times. Some of the times I transposed my voice down an octave so that I became a tenor and a bass. And I gave the singers these sound files so that when we practiced together, I told them, okay, now first you practice your part. And I had recorded the alto section or the soprano section. And they all did it together, but with their own part. And then I said, okay, now we sing together. So they clicked that part, which was the 12-part Martina choir. And then I said, for those of you who really want a challenge, here's a sound file where everybody's singing except your part. So you maintain that yourself. So I experimented with using these sound files to create the illusion that we were actually singing together.
And of course, just having one voice makes it also very homogeneous, very, very sounding. We will just play for you a little bit. There is the score, and I'm playing now. Martina, I will.
Till en plats där stelheten går bort från allt som låter. Bort från allt som låter. Bort från allt som låter.
some breaking there. We will all hear the piece in total with real voice, the real other voices. Thank you, Martina. I will have to ask you also, because you are both the composer and the conductor, what challenges did you run into besides this? When you have written a new piece and you're finally going to perform it, what challenges did you come upon when studying it with the choir?
When studying or when writing specifically for
well,
the
you can
choir?
answer both questions. That would be interesting.
Well, if I start with the writing or the composing, one of the things which is maybe a challenge and maybe it's an advantage is knowing the choir. For example, knowing how many people are in each part. So as for mixtus cantus, there's quite a lot of altos and sopranos, but not very many tenors and basses. And when writing this piece, I made adjustments for that so that the tenor and bass part are actually quite similar here. And that's because they are fewer. So that's one of the adjustments I made, knowing the choir. Otherwise, I think it's actually, in a way, easier to work on a piece that you've written yourself because you know it very well and you know what you want.
And you can change things if you want also.
If you want to, yes. I don't think I actually did, though.
That's good.
But yeah, sure, you can change. You don't have to ask the composer, or maybe you can ask the composer, but you get answers really quickly.
Very good. Thank you, Martina. I think maybe we could talk a little bit about your piece, Kjell.
Yeah.
Which maybe you would like also to introduce to the audience what it's called and so.
Well, when the commission came to make a piece on forces in motion, it was inevitable to think about the greatest global force today, which is the uprising on climate change, the movement that talks about how we can change our lives, how we can change our decisions, so we can save the planet. And as you said, I've written a whole opera on Earth and Wind, which is an exposé from Icarus to the modern flight traveler about our hubris. And I've also written some other pieces, a Greta Thunberg piece for children's choir, mixed choir, and orchestra that are also using watchwords for these Extinction Rebellion, and even Rachel Carson, who wrote the Silent Spring. So I've been rather occupied with these issues for a while. And when Cecilia told me about the Beethoven anniversary and how we could link this idea to that, I immediately thought about how this great composer loved nature, how he was passionate for the untouched countryside, and I decided to use the fragments from Schiller's Ode an die Freude that Beethoven also uses in his Ninth Symphony, and also some quotations from Beethoven himself, which is only heard from the reciter here in this piece. So what certainly Schiller and Beethoven couldn't know anything about was what will happen with the nature, with the countryside, with everything that we love 200 years from there, with the industrialization and the greed from people who sort of took advantage of our the soil and the threats to all species and so. So we work here with a sort of contrast between an untouched creation, which is mainly based on the big choir. It's a double choir, and the great choir is representing this dream we have of a resurrection of the untouched creation. And then we have, it's just 8 singers in the semi-chorus, who are sort of representing the Greta Thunberg idea of attacking and sort of perforating this idyllic structure. So I work with what I call, and has called for a long time in my music, ontological contrariety. Is it right? You know, what deep in us we have, and Beethoven had himself, a passion for the extremes and to let them meet. And in his Pastoral Symphony, the 6th, he really works with the idyllic landscape and the thunderstorm and everything. So he started an epoch which really explored these kind of extremes meeting. So this is also a sort of brutal fight between the idyllic structure and the attacks. And it would be interesting to hear Cecilia talk about maybe not so much how we can get motivation from the great choir, but how we can endorse the little choir to dare to do these things.
So
which
Cecilia, please, if you could tell us about how it went with the rehearsals. And so there's a recited part, and there's the big choir, and then there's the small choir.
Yeah. It's not a very difficult piece. I mean, it's very, I would say, smart written, although of course harmonies that are sometimes, of course, not so. I mean, they wouldn't read it. Straight ahead. No, of course not. But they're except for these more romantic parts. You talked about how to let the small choir dare. To be honest, in this situation, we had so short of time, so it was mostly a question of having them secure to know what to do. And that became much, much better within those that day. So, and you can have them daring so much more. So I would say when they are secure and know what to do, they can be as crazy as you want to. But of course, what is actually always strangely enough, I would say the hardest thing for the big choir is counting. I mean, normal amateur choral singers there are a lot of long notes lying, and then happy, I'm on the right note. Ooh, the G, this, and then I have to because they have to stick together with the small choir. But once they know the pitches, it flows quite easily, I would say. And once they are secure, they can just. I really try to enforce the small choir to be brave. And of course, then there is the problem. Beautiful Freude, like here, and then you might cheat them a little bit because the little ones, I have to give them a lot of force at the same time. But they are smart enough to divide that. So I would say it was more a question of having the time, to having the time to learn it.
What I think about is that choral singers are often very not only keen on, but they can, and this is what they have achieved to sing with bel canto, and when we ask them to growl or to shout or to make cluster glissandos,
They get a bit shy.
they're out of their comfort zone. And that's part of it, because we are out of our comfort zone now when we are threatened by the climate change. So it has to be a sort of nervous thing to do, and trying to let that be something difficult in a way, not technically difficult, but mentally difficult. It takes some time to implement, and that's how it should be. I think if we do it again in February, which is planned, maybe it has sunk in another way, and maybe the small choir can even move on stage to make it even more clear. I had one idea yesterday. 3 years ago, I got a commission from Southern Choral Center, which was our last words.
This Schulze in Johannes.
Yeah, in Malmö, and it was built on quotations from people with a death sentence facing the execution. And it struck me that this is also the case now. We are facing almost literally execution if we don't do something. And we have to realize that this is not just a beautiful piece or trying to solve a musical problem. Also, it's reality, and here art can sort of climb into our contemporary discussion about survival without making it sort of propaganda or political music or so.
Makes it's a good thing, I think. To this is how we feel and how you feel, and we get to hear and see it in a very clear way, I think. So, and if we go on to Michael, your piece in English, then those who shout, I would. This is a piece. Well, maybe you would like to introduce it or say something about it yourself.
Sure. Normally, I treat voice as an instrument, not very vocally in a normal sense. And so when I was asked to write this piece for Lena's group, I had to think about, well, what can I do? Because normally I don't work with these kind of ensembles. And so it was really a challenge to, because what I do is sometimes very extreme with some of the voices. And I tend not to have like people singing normally. So the first movement of this of this collection, Om det som ropar.
Yeah, bravo. Here we go. I'm putting it up for you on the screen if you want to. Here we go.
The score doesn't tell you anything.
That's right.
What it is, it's a race. It's literally a race with voices. So it's like doing a sprint across the room, coming back and doing it again and again and again and again and again. And after about 50 times, you have a winner. So it's not just 1 or 2 times. So it's really a race that they repeat over and over and over again.
Actually, 72 times.
72 times.
But I think also it's very nice because whoever gets there first will have to wait for the other ones to do the coda,
That's right.
the ending of the piece.
Yeah, yeah. And this is really force in motion.
Yeah.
This is really a free force in motion because it's as fast as every singer can go. And have you won yet?
And this may be also connecting towards your collaboration with the ESS.
Oh, ESS. Should I talk about that now? Or?
Well, why not?
Okay. So the European Spallation Source is a consortium of 7 different countries that are coming together in Lund and building a a subatomic photon smashing plant. And so I've developed a collaboration with them, and we are, the first result is happening in December. I've collaborated with a researcher, and he's also a professor in Lund. His specialty is in cryogenics, so cryogenics. So that's deep freezing. So in the science fiction movies, when somebody would go to sleep for 1,000 years and then wake up, that's cryogenics. And so I was collaborating with the guy, but he's taking it very seriously, because when you send a photon beam down a 500-meter stretch of tubing and pipes in order to smash into a wall, then you need to have a way to cool it, because it's so hot that unless, if you can't deep freeze it, then it'll blow up. So all of the billions of euros that they're spending will disappear. So the cryogenics is very important. So I've been studying turbulent flow in deep freezing. But the overall picture is that we will continue collaboration with people at ESS, and for the people here at Lund, it could be a possibility for students and faculty and other researchers in the area to collaborate with scientists at ESS. So we're in discussions as to how to make that work. They have an international artist in residence program at CERN, and they want to do the same thing here. So this is part of the plans. I have the idea that it's not just for international artists, but also for students and faculty, and we can apply for it, for instance, and then come together and work. So this is something that could work for people in the arts and the humanities and the sciences, law. I mean, it could be in any discipline. And so this is something that I've been working on for the last year since I've gotten here. Yeah.
We have to keep an eye out and know that this is happening. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you're
very
welcome.
interesting.
You're welcome.
And also, shall we move on to the next maybe movement of your suite of 4? This one is a hard one. Right?
So this is a canon. It's exactly like Bach would have done. It's a canon, but using the word glass and other manipulations of the word glass. But it's a canon. It's as you learn in music theory, or if you play or study Bach. It's a canon. In, let me see, 8 voices. So, and I would love to hear it done with solo voices sometimes.
Oh.
Yeah. But as you can tell, I break it up, glass, class, and changing the vowel and lengthening the S sound. So it's as one of the performers in the group, what was your experience?
No, I don't. It wasn't that. It was quite straightforward. I think all
Yes.
of us thought it was. This wasn't the difficult
Ah.
part.
No.
But
But the sustaining of the S sound.
yeah,
All of those.
you get quite dry. And well, I think the most difficult part was how long to keep the vowels and to get the S's exactly right.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I think it was quite straightforward.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is.
As a singer, sometimes when you are part of something bigger, you can feel really, what am I doing? Does it matter what I do? But it for sure it does really, because when everyone gets everything polished to the intention, the piece rises above something that you can foresee. So you should not be. You should have patience really as a singer and also a conductor to be particular about polishing the details, because it makes it all lift, which I was happy to attend the rehearsal with the Lena's ensemble, and it was really really fascinating to see also when they met you, when you could work with them, and during the rehearsal getting, this is lovely, going more and more. Beautiful, I think.
Yeah.
And also there is the third movement, who is inspired by Swedish folk song, I think. This we know, right?
Yeah. Actually, it's not inspired by the Swedish. It's inspired by Indian rhythmic practices where they do
The konakol.
yeah a percussive practice. While they clap, they do this strange thing where they clap with the hands together and then with the back of the hand. And while they do this, they do very complicated rhythms. These are not complicated. But the Indian singers, they really explore the rhythmic aspect. And of course, we couldn't go very far with that. But still, there's some complexities in here that I think that you had some challenges with. Yeah.
And
So-
also the little bows are the signs of which way to clap, I think, when they're up, or the other words. Happy mouth or sad mouth.
Yeah. And it's a rhythmic, it's a fun rhythmic piece. Yeah. And the faster the singers can go, the more fun it becomes. But I understand we have to keep.
How was it to work with it for you as a conductor?
Well, we had some challenges, of course, and I could say something about each movement. So talking about this movement, the third, Dinkili Dunkili Doja, it is a little bit like getting put back to the students at the academy, where I think all of us can remember the studies in hjärtskild rytmläsning. And this is actually very educational for the singers to read this. And the biggest challenge to get tight and, as you said, rock solid, it is the swapping between the subdivisions, triplets and sextondelar. Taka, 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 tan, 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 tan. And it changes back and forth many times. So that was hard to get really tight, and it demanded a lot of work for the singers. And if you go over to the next page of this movement, we have this wonderful sound that the singers loved at bar number 16. And I do think you could have used this sound more times. It is this like a sheep or something. You see the last beat of the 16th bar with glottal stops on a So please listen for this when you are able to listen to the first performance in a while. And you can see that the singers enjoy that sound a lot.
Excellent. And then there's the fourth movement, Shahadado, or the polyphonic one.
Yeah. So this is based on the Cool Ning, and Susanna Rosenberg gave me her text on Cool Ning, and so I used one of the melodies in there. The effect of the piece is as if you're in nature. There's a singer far off in the distance with her cows, with the bells rattling in the distance, and we hear the wildlife. We hear the insects buzzing, mosquitoes buzzing, and we hear perhaps frogs and other sorts of natural elements in the piece. So it's really as if you're standing in a field, and somebody off in the distance is singing.
There's just so much going on.
Yeah.
Oh, and it's really, if you can sort of sort, I heard somewhere that the human ear can sort between 3 different sounds at the same time, but this is a challenge then. But if you can sort out the different sounds of the parts, you will hear the richness of the piece really. Some of the sounds were really difficult for the singers to produce. For example, I think the chant thing.
Yeah.
Could you show us a little bit how you want that to sound? If you see on the 1, 2, 3, 4th row.
Right. So this comes from the what the Tibetan monks do, and also people in Mongolia and Tuva do as well. Are you warmed up, Felicita? Are you warmed up? No, but it's okay. No? Can you produce chant for us? Can you sing chant? So she has the upper tone. Can you do it again? One more time. Upper tone. And then the fry. Good. Now what she's doing here,
Yeah, I can.
It, so what she's doing here is she's doing the fry with the true vocal folds. Some Tibetan monks, they use the false vocal folds or the ventricular vocal folds that are above. So you have the true vocal folds that vibrate, and then above you have the false vocal folds that are kind of knobby structures that hit in a very crude way compared to the true vocal folds. So Felicita is doing it with just the true vocal folds. Can you do it inwards?
I guess.
Yeah, so you hear the two tones. It's much easier for men. So that's an inward.
Yeah, for me it's easier outward.
Yeah, yeah. And then what we do is we ask the singer on the outward breath, the singers on the outward breath, to change that fundamental tone. Ooh, something like this. Ooh, ooh, something like that.
You hear? It's like a growling hard rock.
Yes.
Only more.
Yeah. Some of those singers they're using the ventriculars, which is a harsher tone. Yeah, because they have to save their voices. Yeah, which is in some ways easier.
Is that something you, as a composer or as a conductor, run into? I mean, taking a bit care of the voice. They maybe don't want to do some of the sounds, or.
My strategy with this piece was to introduce the 5 different groups. We have a soloist on the top line, and then 5 groups that are supposed to produce different sounds. And I introduced the sounds and asked the singers to try them all, and then they could sort of ask for being in one of the groups in order to, maybe I can find some people here that have talents for any of these sounds. So this has nothing to do with the soprano 1, 2, 3 and alto 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
So I tried to create the groups, and yes, we had of course we had to work a little bit with how to produce these sounds and keep our voice in a healthy mode. And I needed to remind them to stay relaxed and open up the chest and open up the throat and everything. And because when you are not a professional trained singer, you create unnecessary tensions.
Yeah.
So this was very important to remind them about all the time. Yes.
Yeah.
I can tell more about the challenges later.
Yeah. All right. So have we expanded what we want to say about?
Yeah.
So do you have any ideas on, I mean, it's actually written for a female choir, but is there any, I mean, you could use, I could do it with my choir as well.
Absolutely.
Or do you have any ideas on which parts should be more made by male voices, or is it?
No, they can be done by any.
We can just.
Absolutely, yeah. The bottom line there is something called the voiced whistle, and that's also easier for men. So there are 2 ways of producing.
These things are easier.
Yeah, yeah. So there are 2 ways of doing a whistle: at the lips by labial, or with the tongue on the palate, right? And then you can add voice with it. So this one I've asked them to do this whistle and hum. So, ooh, and this technique here is that technique. Sorry, I'm not one.
No, it's lovely. So that you can identify maybe later when we listen. And then there's a little da-da-da.
Oh, yeah.
A little from echoing, maybe from the kulning part.
That's right, yeah.
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 And then there's the hard one, chanting. And then some really, that one, the rhythmic one.
Oh, the air one?
Yeah. That's
Do you want me to do it?
Yeah, please.
Can you do the next page? Yeah. Okay, sorry.
Thank you, Michael. Nice. Lovely. And then there's a little frog part also, or is the mosquitoes?
Mosquitoes,
oh, yeah.
yes.
Oh, this.
Yes.
I didn't envy them. That's a hard, maybe voice training part, but it sounds so lovely together. They're so
Yes.
energetic with it.
Yes.
How do they do it? How do they do something with the lips as well?
Yeah. How many of you make mosquito sounds? Like just in the, because mosquitoes are a big thing here.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah, and also with nasal, right? Nasal voice. So, What were you doing? Oh, you were the frog. You weren't doing the mosquito. Okay,
No
okay.
mosquito there.
And then there's the lovely soloist doing
Yes.
the kunings. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to be a treat for sure.
Thank you.
I maybe if there's anything you want to share, or then it's something you thought about, or if there is anyone among you who wants to pose a question, please feel free about any of the pieces. Or
I have a reflection on false chords, because in my piece the semichorus uses on
Growl.
the growl on 2 or 3 places.
Which I actually put also in the big choir.
Oh, they did.
oh,
Yeah.
excellent! Maybe we can hear how that sounds too. Let me put your piece on. Sorry.
Yeah, there is I don't know, remember exactly which page, but you know, they go to growl, and there is pause, or at least the basses have nothing to do in the big choir, so the
they help them.
basses, they kind of went into
Oh, let's see
So-
that in notation. Is it? No, it's the end
page,
of it.
I think
There you have it once.
There. Wir betreten Feuertrunken, and then.
yeah, exactly. So probably if it was there, then the tenors and basses, they also went in this too, because there are only 4 people growling
Yeah.
down there. So then I just put the whole section getting in the growling
Nice.
before going.
I see the growl as a sort of gravel in the voice, something that it exposes the a tension or a frustration, and well, when Greta Thunberg says, "How dare you?"
Yeah.
Yeah, it's also on page 15, but it must have been there, because there on page 15 the big choir is singing very beautifully at the same time. So
Yes, for sure that will be very effective when you have a piece that is more of a ordinary singing, and then suddenly something like that bursts out to make you sort of, what was that? Makes you, opens your ear, I think, in a way, when you're a listener to this. It will be interesting.
I also wonder about this idea of having cluster notation in choral music. As a young composer, I used it sometimes, and I found that suddenly the singers didn't sing the same way. They sort of shouted more when they had a symbol which didn't call for a special tone.
When they write, like you should have very many different tones, a cluster of tones, it's easier that everyone gets the same tone like that.
Yeah, I mean, we have used clusters for a long time in the music of art, but for choral singers, it's sometimes better to write a lot of exact tones, so they know I am having this one, and you are having that one, and you are having that one, but I know which one, so I can sing it, not shout it. But in this case, I actually used the cluster notation, and it's a part of creating the nerve. Where am I supposed to sing? which frequency shall I use, and I know that this can cause stress, but some composers in the past has also used, you know how Ligeti worked when he had 15 towards 16 in his rhythms, and so it wasn't because it has to be that close, heterophonic, but they had to be on their toes to make it as good as they could. So it created a nerve in the piece. And I don't know if that was the effect or they just...
I have to think a little bit. I mean, the cluster, since they were not so many, of course, the cluster effect disappears a little bit because you don't have... I don't know, actually, if that was the effect or not.
We will see on the film.
We'll see, we'll see if that was the effect.
Martina, did you have any problems with your acoustic sounds studying it?
Well, I try to make them as intuitive as possible. So I based them a lot on speech sounds. And then, of course, I had my Martina choir demonstrating them. But a lot of the sounds are based on windy sounds. And then I ended up instructing the choir, for example, when they had the sh sound, to change their mouth shapes in order to access different overtones, or sh, do things like that. And different kind of tremolo sounds as well, like and things like that. And also using just spoken words as a spoken word cluster, free canon structure, like at the beginning, as we saw, which was actually part of the poem that was used to create a kind of chaos at the beginning. And also certain onomatopoetic words like the word prasslande, which means rustling, which is an interesting word because it means exactly what it sounds like. The word prasslande, 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 prasslande actually does rustle. So my aim was to make it easy to reproduce the sounds just using the frame of reference of spoken words. And I also used a few whistles, where the text talks about bird song, and what I didn't want was the choir doing like anything. So I gave them a few options. They could do, or they could do, or they could do. And the percussionist had crotal, and also crotal with a bow, which actually sounds like whistling. So I always try to match it with the corresponding percussion sound.
And you used the marimba, the crotal.
Yeah, the marimba was the foundation of the percussion. And apart from the marimba, I had different materials, different types of sounds. So I had a couple of metal sounds, a suspended cymbal, which sounds kind of like wood blocks, wind chimes, crotal, like I said, also toms.
And glass chimes as well?
I don't think the percussionist had any glass chimes.
You have to build them yourself if you can get some sounds.
I don't think we found any. But there was supposed to be glass bamboo and metal wind chimes. And I know that we found some kind of corresponding sounds, but maybe it wasn't exactly those instruments.
So is there anyone in the audience who has a question for our panel? Anything is glass clear for the concert. In that case, I'll think we'll maybe make this the end, or if you have
what you're talking about now is I think the word is onomatopoeia. And I reckon that Beethoven had to say about his Sixth Symphony. Es ist mehr Empfindung als Malerei. It's more a kind of with what feeling you get when you experience the nature than to imitate the nature sounds. And of course, when you talk about the words here, which are onomatopoeia, it's something more than just illustrating the word. So it's richer than that for us all, I think.
Okay, so this will put the end of our little conversation, and thank you, composers, thank you, conductors, for sharing a little bit about your work and your works, and also thanks to you, audience, who have been listening and putting in some effort also, and I hope we will enjoy also the concert in a little while of the three pieces: The Stillness, The Lost Paradise, and Those Who Shout. Welcome and thank you.
Thank you.
Wow.
So, on the behalf of the Southern Choral Center, Körcentrum Syd, Lund University Future Week, and Lund Choral Festival, I would like to thank you all for this exciting, fantastic backstage insight to the compositions. And as Ulrika said, at 12 o'clock, we will be able to listen to the concerts, which are streamed, and we will listen to the choirs, Mixtus Cantus, and Lund Academic Choir, Lunds Akademiska Kör, och damkören vid Musikhögskolan i Lund, the women's choir at the Academy of Malmö, Music Academy. So thank you again.
Tack så hemskt mycket. Tackar.
Oj, oj, oj. Tackar, så vackra.
Tack så hemskt mycket, och nu är det väl snart fika, tror jag, också innan konserten. Hoppas jag.